Welcome FGCU Colloquium students. This tour is brought to you by Collaboratory. Collaboratory was founded in 1976 as the Southwest Florida Community Foundation, with a mission to cultivate regional change for the common good through collective leadership, social innovation, and philanthropy, in order to address the evolving community needs in Lee, Collier, Charlotte, Hendry, and Glades counties, Florida. Collaboratory partners with individuals, families, and corporations who have created or contributed to over 400 philanthropic funds. Thanks to them, Collaboratory is able to invest millions of dollars in grants and programs to the community each year.
New tonight, the city of Fort Myers is trying to revamp the Midtown area, and it's starting with an old train depot. The Southwest Florida Community Foundation is turning the building on Jackson Street into a technology hub to draw in professionals from all over Southwest Florida. NBC2's Levi Ismail is in the newsroom with how it could be the start of the neighborhood's revitalization.
This is the start of what could be the transformation of Midtown. In December, city leaders said they wanted to show just how much potential this area had, and today they're doubling down on their promise.
This is one of those days that'll go down as another great moment in the history of the city.
1924, the year Fort Myers opened the doors to its new train depot. Nearly 100 years later, a new breath of life.
Rehab's an important building in the city of Fort Myers, our train depot that was established many, many decades ago.
A project only months in the works, now breaking ground in Midtown.
A hub, the new rail that will connect people.
It's called the Collaboratory, and for good reason.
This project is for the community, it involves the community, and we're looking for so much interaction.
Sustainable and energy efficient.
Reusing something for the common good is really meaningful to us.
This $10 million, 13,000 square foot technology center connects businesses and people across the region.
They can all be part of the conversation without having to come to a physical space.
Think of it as a high-tech library with no books.
Not for technology's sake, but what it means in connectivity.
The building is open to the public, but could one day also be the future home of satellite college campuses.
But the important thing is the life and vitality that it will inspire in the years to come.
Now, funding for this project was organized through a new market tax credit deal with the Southwest Florida Community Foundation. It's a program that encourages economic development in distressed neighborhoods. We're live in the newsroom. Levi Ismail, NBC2.
The Collaboratory is a great example of repurposing an existing building, saving a piece of Southwest Florida culture and history while reducing the use of new resources. The north part of the space is the renovated Atlantic Coastline Railroad Depot, and the southern part of the building is new construction. As we enter the building, you'll notice at your feet the railroad tracks that used to carry cars full of people across the Caloosahatchee and into Fort Myers. The tracks were left here to honor the history of the Atlantic Coastline Railroad and its importance to the region. Today, the tracks lead the community through the doors of the Collaboratory into a shared space of innovation so that all can work towards sustainable societal patterns, leaving no one behind. To learn more about the history of this space and our efforts to be intentional in its remodel, let's watch a video about the history of the site.
We are talking about a 1924 structure. We're talking about being built brick at a time in basically 1923, and being abandoned in 1971. So we're talking about that the course of history through about 3/4 of the 20th century. And initially, Garrett, if you'll take a look over here, this is the profile. This is what you'd see when the station was built. Now, the Atlantic Coastline Railroad crossed the Caloosahatchee River in 1904, and they had a wooden depot, both passenger and freight, and it was on Monroe Street. In fact, the railroad tracks went right down the middle of Monroe. And in 1920, early 20s, they decided that the city was, how do you say this, large enough? But we're still not even to 8,000, but nonetheless, large enough to have a contemporary depot. And it was done in, as you can very easily tell, a Mediterranean Renaissance sort of thing. Now, it wasn't unique to here. This profile was built in 2 locations for the ACL. It was built in Sarasota and has since been razed. And fortunately, the Community Foundation has saved this one. This is a segregated station, obvious. It's segregated from the time it was built until the time it was abandoned. The building had 2 waiting rooms, as you see, the white waiting room and the colored waiting room. The railroad operated from the center here. There were 4 bathrooms, of course, 2 on the segregated side and 2 on this segregated side, for obvious reasons. And this right here indicates the colored water fountain, and this indicates the white water fountain. So another telling about this is that in 1957, they reduced the colored waiting room in half, and then they used the other half as storage. In the 1970s, there was still boarding by race in groups. And in the 1970s, closed in 71, that was the last train, but nonetheless, it wasn't, of course, by law, it was by habit.
But having the awareness and being able to tell the story. So we talk about 1971, there are a lot of citizens who still have recollection of the train, of the railroad tracks.
Yes.
Going back and looking at historical anecdotal information connected to the lynching around 1924,
Right.
We know that the story tells us that those young men who were killed, lynched, not above the age 16, one young man was actually found sleeping in a train, sleeping in the cargo train, and was turned
Exactly.
into his captors.
Right.
So the story of the trains have always had a connection. I asked you a question about Slater. My great-grandfather came from the middle part of South Carolina, hopped on a train and came down here and ended up at Slater and stayed there before he came over to the Safety Hill, which eventually became Dunbar Community.
Right.
So I think that if you look at the African-American experience and the diaspora and the Great Migration, trains and transportation have always been a way to find a better life, to find a more opportunity. And it's unfortunate because of Jim Crow law and because of segregation laws that were the law of the land, that some of that opportunity was diminished because of these laws that were codified on the book. And to show that until 1971, there were things that were in place that made it not inclusive. Although we were a diverse community, we were not an inclusive community. So it shows us that we still have lots of work to do.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more.
Collaboratory signed a long-term lease with the City of Fort Myers for the Jackson Street Depot. This is a true public-private partnership in which the city is not funding the entire infrastructure. It's a perfect example of impact investing by getting everyone at the table. Collaboratory's building is the first effort to transform the Midtown area in Fort Myers, adjacent to the historic River District. The project was funded through a $10 million New Market Tax Credit program, which encourages economic development in distressed neighborhoods. The program requires investors to provide funds to community development entities, and in exchange, those investors are awarded credits against their federal tax obligations. In this way, the program creates an incentive for businesses to invest in the areas that they would otherwise avoid, areas that could benefit from the economic investment the most. To learn more about the New Market Tax Credit Program, we are going to hear from our CEO, Sarah Owen.
The Collaboratory is slated to open in the summer of 2018, and it's very fun for me to just kind of blur my eyes as I walk around the construction site and imagine not just a building, but all the things that are going to happen inside of it. The Community Foundation and other stakeholders in the community were really looking for a way to make an impact in our region. We had what I would call a big reality check conversation one day with Nelson Black around what the possibilities were for creating community change through a new market tax credit deal. And what that was able to do was catalyze a lot of people in our community to say, this is something we need to make happen. The day that we decided to renovate the train depot, we were not making just a commitment to the foundation, we were making a commitment to the community at large. Anytime you can bring people together from different parts of our community, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, creates a stable community. And so what we wanted to create was a hub for all of that to take place. The Collaboratory would only be possible through the partners that agreed to walk alongside of us.
So when I think of what role the Collaboratory will play in our community, I see it being a role that kind of brings people together. They're going to have different organizations that will be working out of the building. And so the whole idea is that you bump into somebody when you're coming in and out of the building, or you're going to get a cup of coffee, and that's where those conversations happen. As a community redevelopment agency, one of the things that we focus on is trying to help the distressed communities through workforce development. We're having a new focus on housing. And so we're really trying to find different ways to bring people in to help support the businesses that are owned by the folks that really live in this community. One of the great things about this project is that it's going to keep the historic building, which actually used to be a history museum for us. And it will kind of keep that charm and everything that is important about the community alive. Opportunity like partnering with the Community Foundation and the Florida Community Loan Fund is fantastic because they kind of bring in that kind of rock to get the centerpiece to get our Midtown area going.
The Collaboratory is a great example of the triple bottom line of sustainability: people, profit, and planet in action. It is the home of the Southwest Florida Community Foundation, an organization that connects philanthropists with community needs. The foundation strives to facilitate environmental, social, and economic sustainability in the region by bringing people together in historic downtown Fort Myers to find solutions to local problems. In addition, the building itself encompasses an important piece of Fort Myers history and incorporates sustainable design features both inside and out. In its work, the Foundation focuses on 10 causes, each of which has a series of outcomes that are used across the country to measure social, economic, and environmental impact based on the STAR, which stands for Sustainability Tools for Assessing and Rating, Community Rating System, and LEAD, which stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, for Cities and Communities program. We've aligned these outcomes to the Sustainable Development Goals, otherwise known as the SDGs, in order to magnify the potential for impact, as seen in this graphic. Our causes include philanthropy and community trust, environment, climate change, education, animals, equity and empowerment, economy and jobs, health and safety, community design, and arts, community, and culture.